In the heart of the African savannah, where the sun sets like fire over golden plains and the air hums with the pulse of wild life, an extraordinary story unfolded, a story that would travel beyond borders, beyond species, beyond the very limits of what we believe separates humans from animals. It began, as many great stories do, with desperation. One afternoon, under the blazing African sun, a mother lion was pacing near a steep ravine. Her golden coat shimmered in the light, her muscles tense, her movements sharp with fear. The great predator, usually the symbol of raw power and dominance, was trembling. Her roars cut through the savannah not in triumph but in terror. Her cub, her tiny heartbeat, had slipped down into the ravine and was trapped between jagged rocks. The more the cub cried, the more the mother roared, clawing helplessly at the edge. She tried again and again to reach her baby, but the rocks were steep, the ground loose, and one wrong move could send her tumbling down to her own death. This wasn't the roar of a hunter, it was the cry of a mother. A few kilometers away, a man named David, a wildlife photographer, was packing his gear. He had been in the savannah for 3 days capturing the majestic beauty of lions for a conservation documentary. Through his binoculars, he had watched prides hunt, rest, and nurture their young. But today, something caught his eye, the unmistakable echo of distress. He had heard lion calls before, but this one was different. It was raw, it was pleading, it was the sound of heartbreak. He picked up his camera and followed the sound through the tall grass. As he drew closer, the sight before him made his heart stop. There, just a few meters away, was the queen of the savannah herself, the lioness, pacing near the ravine, her tail flicking anxiously, her eyes wild. David's instincts told him to stay back. Every book, every documentary, every expert had said the same thing: never approach a lion, especially not a mother protecting her young. But something deep within him stirred, something older than fear, something more human than logic. He lowered his camera and looked closer. Through the dust and rocks below, he saw the small cub wedged between stones, mewing weakly. It was barely moving. The sun was scorching, and without help it wouldn't last long. David's heart raced. He knew the risk. One wrong step, one sudden move, and the mother lion could tear him apart. Yet as he looked into her eyes, he saw something that no camera could ever capture: a silent plea. The lioness stopped pacing and looked straight at him. For a few seconds, time seemed to freeze. Her golden eyes weren't full of rage, they were full of pain. David took a step forward, then another. The lioness growled low, deep, warning him to stay back. He froze, his heart thundering. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't understand his words, but perhaps in some way she did. Because as he slowly crouched near the edge and looked down, the lioness backed away a few feet. Her breathing slowed, and she watched him intently. He could feel his pulse in his ears as he examined the ravine. It was steep, nearly 20 feet deep. Climbing down without equipment was dangerous, almost suicidal. He looked around for a fallen branch, a vine, something to help him. Finally, he found an old rope in his jeep, worn, frayed, but it would have to do. As he tied it around his waist and secured it to a nearby tree, he could feel the lioness watching his every move. Her gaze never wavered. She was tense, her body coiled like a spring, but she didn't attack. It was as if she knew that this strange, fragile creature, this man, was her only hope. Step by step, David lowered himself into the ravine. The heat was suffocating, dust filled his mouth, rocks shifted beneath his boots. He could hear the cub's faint cries echoing off the walls. "Hang on, little one," he muttered, his voice trembling. As he got closer, he saw that the cub's leg was trapped between 2 stones. It was bleeding. Gently, he pried the rocks apart and lifted the tiny body into his arms. The cub was weak, but alive. Then came the hardest part, the climb back up. His arms burned, the rope cut into his hands, sweat poured down his face. Every second, he expected the mother to lose patience, to pounce, to end him, but she didn't. She stood at the edge, her eyes fixed on him, her breathing shallow as if praying. When he finally reached the top, he set the cub down on the grass and stepped back quickly. The lioness rushed forward, nudging the cub gently, licking its face, her low purrs rumbling like thunder. The cub moved weakly, then let out a soft cry, a sound of life. The mother licked its wound, then turned to David. And then it happened something no one could have ever predicted. The lioness approached him slowly, cautiously. David didn't move. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't. She stopped just a few feet away, her golden eyes locked on his. He expected a growl, maybe a warning swipe. Instead, she lowered her head. For a brief moment, she bowed not in submission, but in recognition, a silent thank you from a mother who had no words. Then she gently picked up her cub by the scruff and walked away into the tall grass, disappearing into the wild. David stood there, frozen, unable to speak, tears blurring his vision. He had just witnessed something sacred, a moment of trust between two beings from different worlds. When he returned to camp and shared what had happened, no one believed him at first, but the video from his small GoPro camera told the truth. The footage showed every moment: the lioness's desperate pacing, the man's trembling descent, the cub's rescue, and that final, unforgettable bow. Within days, the footage went viral. It spread across continents, across languages. People from every corner of the world watched it in awe. Headlines read, "Man saves lion cub mother's reaction leaves everyone speechless." Social media exploded. Some called it a miracle, others a sign that compassion still existed in the world. But beyond the viral fame, beyond the millions of views, something deeper began to shift in the hearts of those who watched. People saw, maybe for the first time, that love, the pure, desperate, unstoppable love of a mother, wasn't limited to humans. It lived in the wild, in the roar of a lioness, in the trembling of her heart as she begged a stranger for help. David was invited to speak on international stages, but he always said the same thing: that lioness didn't just trust me, she reminded me what it means to be human. He went on to dedicate his life to wildlife rescue, founding an organization that built safer habitats for lions and helped protect cubs from poaching and starvation. The project was named Amara, the word for immortal love. And fittingly, the logo was the silhouette of a lioness bowing her head beside a man. Months later, David returned to the savannah. This time, he wasn't there to film. He was there to say thank you. He stood near the same ravine, the same tree, the same endless golden horizon. As the wind rustled through the grass, he spotted a familiar shape in the distance, a lioness with a slightly faded scar near her paw, and beside her, two strong young cubs played under her watch. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned and disappeared once more. Some stories don't need words, they speak through the soul. The world that watched that video didn't just see a lion and a man, they saw hope. They saw that compassion doesn't require translation. They saw that when fear meets courage, when desperation meets kindness, even nature herself pauses to take notice. That moment between the mother lion and the man reminded us all of something ancient, that we are not apart from nature, but a part of it. The same pulse that beats in our veins beats in the heart of every creature, and sometimes, in the most unlikely moments, the wild mirrors back to us the very best of who we can be. The story didn't end there. The clip became a powerful message for conservation efforts worldwide. Donations poured in to protect lions, to fund rescue missions, to restore balance to ecosystems torn apart by human greed. But more than that, it awakened empathy, a force stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger even than the barriers of species. Teachers showed the video in classrooms to teach children about kindness. Scientists studied the behavior of the lioness, astonished at how she suppressed her instinct to attack out of what seemed like understanding. Psychologists wrote papers about interspecies empathy, but David knew it was simpler than that. It wasn't science, it was love, because when you strip away everything, the language, the logic, the species, the survival love remains, a mother's love, a human's compassion, the bond that reminds us we are all connected, bound by something unseen yet undeniable. Years later, when David was interviewed for a documentary, the host asked him what went through his mind that day. He smiled softly and said, "At that moment, I wasn't thinking about danger or glory. I just saw a mother begging for help, and when you see that whether she has 2 legs or 4, you don't walk away." The interviewer then asked, "Do you think she remembered you?" He paused, looking out at the savannah through the camera lens. "Maybe she did, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that the world remembered her. Because in that single act, a lioness lowering her head to a man, the world was reminded that compassion is universal. It knows no species, no boundaries, no fear. And perhaps that's why this story continues to move millions. It's not just about a lion and her cub. It's about every moment when life asks us to be brave, when someone or something depends on our courage. It's about the truth that when we act from kindness, we bridge the gap between worlds. So whenever you doubt that goodness exists, remember that day in the savannah. Remember the desperate roar of a mother, the trembling hands of a man, the heartbeat of a tiny cub, and the silence that followed when the wild bowed to gratitude. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't told in words. They're told in the language of the heart, in the quiet moment when fear yields to compassion, and two beings, so different yet so alike, recognize each other not as enemies, but as souls. That day, the savannah bore witness to something extraordinary, not the strength of a lion, not the bravery of a man, but the sacred bond that connects them both. And in that connection, the world saw the reflection of its own lost humanity. The desperate mother lion begged for help, and the man answered. The cub lived, and the world remembered. And in that simple act, the line between man and beast blurred, replaced by something eternal. Love, that and only that is what truly shocked the entire world.